The crimson sun of Virilia cast long shadows across the battle-scarred terrain. The air hung heavy with the acrid scent of burnt metal and plasma residue, the aftermath of a devastating aerial assault that had ended mere hours ago. The battlefield had fallen into an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional hiss of cooling plasma puddles and the distant rumble of emergency vehicles. Lieutenant Malik Heron wiped sweat from his brow as he surveyed the destruction from his observation post. He hadn't expected his first week at the Virilian Alliance station to include a front-row seat to an interplanetary skirmish. At 32, he was hardly green, but his rushed deployment to this distant world as an Earth Alliance observer made him feel like a rookie all over again. Quite the welcome party, he muttered to himself, adjusting the settings on his tactical visor. The Earth Alliance uniform felt uncomfortably tight in Virilia's higher gravity and heat. His orders had been simple: observe Virilian military capabilities, report back, and help facilitate potential military cooperation between Earth and this plasma-rich world. Nobody had mentioned dodging plasma artillery. In the distance, beyond the smoking craters and twisted metal, stood the imposing silhouette of Queen Aurelia Vex. Even from this far, her presence commanded attention. Her tall, lithe frame was encased in gleaming black and gold dragon-scale armor that caught the crimson sunlight like liquid fire. Her elongated ears, characteristic of the Virilian species, were adorned with intricate metallic ornaments that chimed softly with each movement. But it was her eyes that most Earth soldiers commented on: large, entirely silver, with no visible pupils, yet somehow conveying a piercing, calculating intelligence. Malik watched as she moved among her troops, her back straight, head held high. The Queen of Aurelia wasn't just a figurehead, she was a battlefield commander, and the reverence her soldiers showed her wasn't merely ceremonial. The year 2387 marked the third decade of her reign, and from what Malik had learned during his brief preparation, those decades had been ones of technological advancement and military consolidation for the Virilian people. A voice crackled through his comm unit. "Lieutenant Heron, your presence is requested at the ceremonial review. The Queen wishes to acknowledge Earth's observation team." Malik acknowledged the summons and began the trek across the uneven terrain toward the Virilian command center. The temporary alliance between Earth and Virilia was precarious at best. Both civilizations recognized the potential benefits of cooperation, particularly in the face of mutual threats from the expansionist syndicate remnants that plagued this sector of space. Yet, mutual suspicion remained. Humans viewed the Virilians as overly rigid and tradition-bound. Virilians considered humans unpredictable and potentially untrustworthy. As Malik approached the command center, a sleek, crystalline structure that seemed to emerge organically from the rocky ground, he couldn't help but feel a prickle of unease. The peace parade scheduled for today was meant to be a symbolic gesture, a public display of cooperation between their species. But the recent attacks suggested that not everyone welcomed this budding alliance. He wasn't wrong. The ceremonial review began with impressive precision. Virilian guards in their ceremonial armor formed a perfect corridor, leading to a raised platform where Queen Aurelia stood with her High Council advisors, Earth Alliance representatives. Primarily diplomats with a handful of military observers like Malik were positioned to one side. The small human contingent looked distinctly out of place amid the taller, more imposing Virilian officials. Ambassador Delmar Voss, the senior Earth representative, stepped forward to deliver his prepared remarks about cooperation and mutual respect. Malik only half listened, his attention drawn to the way Queen Aurelia's gaze systematically scanned the assembled crowd, as if searching for something or someone. The first sign that something was wrong came when one of the Virilian honor guards stiffened unnaturally. Malik noticed the subtle change in posture, the slight tremor in the guard's hands. His combat instincts, honed through years of service, sent warning signals through his body before his conscious mind could process what was happening. The honor guard's plasma rifle discharged without warning, the beam searing through the air toward the platform. Queen Aurelia's personal shield flared momentarily, absorbing the impact, but the shot was merely a distraction. From the crowd, 3 figures in nondescript clothing suddenly shed their disguises, revealing the distinctive black armor of the syndicate mercenaries. "Black Ring!" someone shouted, using the common name for the notorious mercenary group. Time seemed to slow for Malik. He saw one of the assassins raise a weapon, a curved plasma blade that glowed with malevolent energy. The Queen's shield had been momentarily depleted by the rifle shot, and her personal guards were still reacting to the first threat. The assassin lunged forward, the blade aimed directly at Aurelia's heart. Malik didn't remember making a conscious decision. In one fluid motion, he vaulted over the barricade, separating the Earth contingent from the central aisle, and threw himself into the path of the oncoming blade. He felt a searing pain as the plasma edge sliced through his uniform and into his flesh. The world tilted, sound became muffled, but he maintained enough awareness to see the shock in the assassin's eyes, clearly not expecting a human to interfere. That moment of surprise gave Queen Aurelia's guards the second they needed. Plasma rifles discharged in perfect unison, and the assassin crumpled to the ground. Malik felt himself falling, the pain in his side blossoming into something beyond description as the plasma began to eat into his cells. As darkness closed in around him, the last thing Malik saw was Queen Aurelia's face above him, her silver eyes wide with something he couldn't quite identify. Shock, confusion, or perhaps something else entirely. Her lips moved, but he couldn't make out the words before consciousness abandoned him completely. When Malik awoke, the ceiling above him pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to flow like liquid. He tried to move, but found his body uncooperative. The pain in his side had been reduced to a dull throb, but an unusual coldness had settled into his limbs. "The human awakens," a voice said from somewhere to his left. "Inform the Queen." Malik turned his head with effort. A Vaurelian in white and silver robes stood next to a bank of equipment that hummed softly. The Vaurelian's elongated fingers moved across holographic displays with practiced precision. "Where am I?" Malik managed, his voice rough. "The Alliance Medical Chamber," the Vaurelian replied, without looking up from the displays. "I am Chief Medical Engineer Tyron. You have been unconscious for 26 standard hours, while we attempted to counteract the plasma poisoning." Memories flooded back. The parade, the assassins, the plasma blade. Malik attempted to sit up but was firmly pushed back down by Tyron's assistant. "The plasma has damaged your internal cellular structure," Tyron explained clinically. "We have never attempted to treat a human for such wounds before. Your physiology is different. The treatment is experimental." "Experimental," Malik repeated, a new concern pushing through the fog of his mind. "Am I going to die?" Tyron finally looked at him directly, silver eyes unblinking. "Unknown. The next 12 hours will be determinative." Before Malik could respond, the door to the chamber slid open, and Queen Aurelia Vex entered. Without her battle armor, she appeared taller, her frame more delicate than Malik had initially perceived. She wore a flowing robe of deep purple, adorned with geometric patterns in silver thread. Her long ears, freed from their ceremonial ornaments, twitched slightly, a sign of agitation, Malik guessed. "Leave us," she commanded, and Tyron and his assistants immediately complied, exiting the chamber without a word. For a long moment, Queen Aurelia simply stood at the foot of Malik's bed, her silver eyes studying him with unsettling intensity. When she finally spoke, her voice was melodious but formal. "Lieutenant Malik Heron of Earth Alliance, you placed yourself between a plasma blade and my heart. Why?" Malik swallowed, finding his throat dry. "Instinct, Your Majesty. I'm a soldier. Protecting allies is what we do." Her head tilted slightly. We are not yet formal allies. The treaty remains unsigned. Then consider it a gesture of goodwill, Malik replied, attempting a smile that turned into a grimace as pain flared in his side. Queen Aurelia approached closer, her movements fluid and graceful. You saved my life at great risk to your own. Do you understand what this means under Varelian law? Malik blinked in confusion. I'm afraid I don't, Your Majesty. The law of life debt, she stated, as if reciting from memory. When one's life is preserved by another's action, the saved owes a debt that must be repaid. Until that debt is discharged, our lives are bound together. Malik's confusion deepened. I don't understand. It means, Aurelia continued, her voice taking on an edge of what might have been frustration, that by our most ancient and sacred laws, I now owe you a life debt. Until that debt is repaid, you have claim over me. Claim? Malik repeated, feeling increasingly out of his depth. I don't want any claim, Your Majesty. I just acted on instinct. Your intentions are irrelevant, she replied. The law of life debt predates our written history. It cannot be ignored or dismissed, not even by the Queen. Her ears flattened slightly against her head. This creates complications. Before Malik could inquire further about these complications, the door slid open again, and Ambassador Voss entered, followed by several Varelian officials in formal attire. Lieutenant Heron. Ambassador Voss greeted him with obvious relief. Thank God you're awake. The medics weren't certain. He broke off, noticing the tension in the room. Your Majesty, I hope I'm not interrupting. You are, Queen Aurelia replied coldly. But since you are here, you might as well be informed. According to our laws, I now owe Lieutenant Heron a life debt. Ambassador Voss's expression shifted from confusion to dawning comprehension to barely concealed alarm. I see. And the nature of this life debt? One of the Varelian officials stepped forward. By ancient law, Queen Aurelia's life now belongs to this human until the debt is repaid in kind or by equivalent service. During this time, he has right of protection and guardianship over her. That's unnecessary, Malik interjected, trying to sit up again despite the pain. I don't want anything in return. I was just doing my job. Ambassador Voss raised a hand to silence him. Lieutenant, I don't think you understand the gravity of this situation. He turned to Queen Aurelia. Your Majesty, surely there must be some diplomatic solution that respects your traditions while acknowledging that Lieutenant Heron acted as a representative of Earth Alliance, not as an individual claiming rights under Varelian law. Queen Aurelia's expression remained impassive, but her ears betrayed her agitation with subtle movements. The law of life debt cannot be circumvented by diplomatic maneuvering. Ambassador, it is the foundation upon which our society is built. She turned back to Malik. Until the debt is discharged, you will remain under royal protection and in my personal service. One of the Varelian officials made a sound of protest, but a single glance from Aurelia silenced him. Lieutenant Heron will need time to recover, she continued. During that time, he will be educated in our ways. Then, we shall determine how best to proceed. She moved toward the door, then paused. And, Ambassador, I suggest you study our traditions more thoroughly before proposing further diplomatic solutions. This matter transcends politics. With that, she swept from the room, her advisors trailing behind her like shadows. Ambassador Voss sagged visibly once they had gone. Lieutenant, do you have any idea what you've done? Malik winced as another wave of pain washed through him. Saved an ally's life. You've created a diplomatic nightmare, Voss corrected. This life debt business, it's not just some quaint custom. It's their equivalent of a sacred oath, with legal and cultural implications we barely understand. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. The Queen of Varelia essentially belongs to you until she pays off this debt. Do you realize what that means for our negotiations? For the balance of power? I didn't ask for this, Malik protested. No one ever does, Voss replied grimly. But here we are. The Verilians take their traditions deadly seriously. Lieutenant, this life debt could be an opportunity or a catastrophe for Earth-Virilia relations. He moved toward the door. Rest and recover. I'll have our cultural attachés brief you as soon as you're strong enough. In the meantime, try not to acquire any more alien queens, would you? After the ambassador left, Malik lay back, staring at the pulsing ceiling. The plasma wound throbbed in time with his heartbeat. But it was the weight of his new situation that truly pressed down on him. He had come to Virilia to observe, to be invisible. Now he found himself at the center of a cultural and diplomatic tangle he barely comprehended. Outside his medical chamber, he could hear voices rising and falling in what sounded like heated debate. He caught fragments. Unprecedented. Danger to sovereignty. The human cannot possibly understand, before exhaustion pulled him back under, into dreams filled with silver eyes and plasma blades. The next few days passed in a blur of pain, medical procedures, and brief, intense educational sessions. Tyron and his medical team worked tirelessly to neutralize the plasma contamination in Malik's body, using techniques they adapted on the fly for human physiology. The treatment involved injections of counterplasma that burned through his veins like liquid fire, followed by periods of such intense cold that Malik feared his limbs might shatter. When he wasn't undergoing treatment, Virilian cultural specialists visited his chamber, instructing him in their language, customs, and particularly the intricate protocols surrounding the life debt. Malik learned that the tradition dated back to Virilia's ancient clan wars, when saving an enemy's life created a sacred bond that transcended tribal loyalties. Over millennia, it had evolved into a complex legal and social institution, with obligations and rights codified in thousands of precedents. So, let me get this straight, Malik said to his primary instructor, a stern Virilian scholar named Visrek. Until Queen Aurelia saves my life, or performs some equivalent service, she's... what? My servant. Visrek's ears flattened in obvious disapproval. That is a crude simplification. The life debt creates a bond of mutual obligation. The debtor owes their life to the creditor, yes. But the creditor assumes responsibility for the debtor's well-being and honor. You cannot simply order Queen Aurelia to polish your boots. Lieutenant. I wouldn't dream of it, Malik muttered. Furthermore, Visrek continued, ignoring the interruption, while the Queen must honor your reasonable requests and protect your interests, you are equally bound to respect her position and duties. You cannot demand actions that would harm Virilia or violate her royal obligations. So what can I demand? Malik asked, genuinely curious. Protection, counsel, priority of audience, accompaniment in danger. These are the traditional rights of a life creditor, Visrek replied. In ancient times, it was common for the debtor to become the creditor's sworn guardian until the debt was discharged. And how exactly does one discharge a life debt? Malik asked. I'm not planning on needing my life saved anytime soon. The most straightforward way is reciprocal life-saving, Visrek acknowledged. But our law recognizes equivalence in service or sacrifice. A debt may be discharged through actions that preserve the creditor's honor, lineage, or legacy, with the same devotion one would show in preserving their physical life. Malik sighed, leaning back against his pillows. This all seems unnecessarily complicated for what was just a split-second reaction. Visrek's silver eyes narrowed. That split-second reaction has tied you to our queen in one of our culture's most sacred bonds. I suggest you take it more seriously, Lieutenant. Before Malik could respond, the door to his chamber opened, and Queen Aurelia entered. Visrek immediately stood and bowed deeply. Leave us, Aurelia commanded, and Vizrek departed without another word. The queen approached Malik's bed, studying him with those unsettling silver eyes. Chief Medical Engineer Tyron informs me that you are responding well to treatment. The plasma contamination has been reduced by 60%. It only feels like I'm dying half the time now, Malik replied with a weak smile. That's progress, I guess. To his surprise, something like amusement flickered across Aurelia's face. You humans and your inappropriate humor. Even at death's door, you make jests. It's a coping mechanism, Malik explained. Laugh or cry. I've always preferred laughing. Aurelia tilted her head slightly. An interesting philosophy. She moved closer, her robes whispering against the floor. Today, she wore deep blue, with silver patterns that seemed to shift and change as she moved. The High Council has been in continuous session since the assassination attempt. Many believe the life debt poses a threat to Virilian sovereignty. I've been getting that impression from my lessons, Malik admitted. For what it's worth, I have no interest in using this situation to undermine your authority. Your interest or lack thereof is irrelevant, Aurelia replied, echoing her earlier statement. The life debt exists independently of our wishes. The only question is how we navigate its implications. Malik met her gaze directly. Then tell me, Your Majesty, what do you want from me? How do we make this work without causing a diplomatic incident? For a long moment, Aurelia was silent, her silver eyes unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower, less formal. What I want, Lieutenant Heron, is to understand why you did it. Humans are known for self-preservation, not self-sacrifice. You had no cultural imperative, no personal connection to me, yet you placed your body between mine and certain death. Malik considered his answer carefully. Humans aren't as selfish as you might think, Your Majesty. We value life, all life. I saw someone in danger, and I acted. It's that simple. Nothing about this situation is simple, Aurelia countered. Your action has created ripples that extend far beyond that moment on the parade ground. The assassination attempt was not random. It was orchestrated by elements within my own government who oppose alliance with Earth. Now, with this life debt, their opposition has new fuel. I'm sorry about that, Malik said sincerely. If there's a way to formally release you from this obligation— There is not, Aurelia interrupted. But there may be a way to use it to our advantage. She straightened, her manner becoming more formal again. Once you have recovered, you will join my personal guard. This will satisfy the traditional requirements of the life debt, while placing you in a position where you can be closely monitored. Your Earth Alliance superiors will be informed that this arrangement is non-negotiable, but temporary. And how long is temporary? Malik asked. Until the debt is discharged, Aurelia replied simply. Or until circumstances change. She moved toward the door. Rest now, Lieutenant. Your training begins as soon as Chief Medical Engineer Tyron declares you fit. After she had gone, Malik stared at the ceiling, trying to process the surreal turn his mission had taken. He had come to Virilia as an observer, meant to blend into the background. Now he was bound to its queen by an ancient tradition he barely understood, caught in political currents far deeper than he had been prepared for. And somewhere out there, the assassins who had failed once were undoubtedly planning their next attempt. 2 weeks later, Malik stood in a training chamber deep within the royal compound, sweat streaming down his face as he struggled to maintain proper form with a Virilian plasma spear. The weapon felt alive in his hands, vibrating with energy that seemed to respond to his thoughts as much as his movements. His instructor, a stern Virilian warrior named Krev, circled him critically. Your stance is still too rigid, Krev observed. The spear is an extension of your body, not a separate entity. Feel its rhythm merge with your own. Malik adjusted his grip, trying to relax into the unfamiliar stance. His side still ached where the plasma blade had cut him, though the wound had healed remarkably well under Tyron's care. Only a web of silver scars remained, marking where the plasma had burned through his flesh. Better, Krev acknowledged grudgingly. But still human. Too much tension in the shoulders. Maybe because I am human, Malik suggested, unable to keep a hint of frustration from his voice. For days now, he had been immersed in intensive training, combat techniques, court protocols, basic Varillian language, all designed to prepare him for his new role in the Queen's Guard. It was exhausting, physically and mentally. Krev's ears twitched in what Malik had come to recognize as amusement. Being human is not an excuse for poor form, Lieutenant. The Queen's life may depend on your ability to wield that weapon effectively. I thought I was supposed to be the one protected under this arrangement, Malik muttered. But he adjusted his stance again, feeling the plasma spear hum in response. The life debt creates mutual obligation, Krev reminded him. While the Queen owes you her life, you have assumed responsibility for her well-being. It is a circle of honor, not a one-way street. Malik had heard this explanation repeatedly since his recovery began, but it still felt foreign to his Earth Alliance sensibilities. In the structured hierarchy of military service, he understood. Obligations flowed from clear lines of authority. This Varillian concept of reciprocal debt seemed designed to blur those lines, creating bonds that transcended rank and position. Again, Krev commanded, and Malik moved through the combat form once more, the plasma spear tracing glowing arcs through the air. Later, exhausted from training, Malik sat alone in his new quarters within the royal compound. His rooms were spacious but alien, the furniture designed for Varillian physiology, the decorations heavy with cultural significance he was still learning to interpret. Through the crystalline window, he could see the capital city of Varillia stretching toward the horizon, its spiraling towers glowing with internal plasma light against the perpetually crimson sky. His communication pad chimed, and Ambassador Voss's face appeared on the screen. Lieutenant Heron, secure enough to talk? Malik glanced around his quarters. He had been assured they were private, but he harbored doubts. As secure as possible, I suppose. Voss nodded, understanding the implication. Earth Command is concerned about your new position. This wasn't part of the mission parameters. Tell me about it, Malik replied dryly. I didn't exactly plan to become entangled in alien royalty obligations. Nevertheless, now that you are, we need to ensure this development serves Alliance interests. Voss's expression was serious. Your position gives you unprecedented access to the Varillian inner circle. Command wants you to leverage that access. Gather intelligence on their plasma technology, military capabilities, political factions. Malik frowned. You want me to spy on them? Well, I'm bound by their sacred honor code. I want you to remember who you work for, Voss replied firmly. The life debt may be their tradition, but your oath to Earth Alliance came first. These people aren't our allies yet. Their potential partners we're still evaluating. And if those obligations conflict? Malik asked. Voss's expression hardened. Then you remember your primary loyalty, Lieutenant. That's an order. The connection terminated before Malik could respond. He stared at the blank screen, a knot forming in his stomach. He had known, of course, that part of his observer role involved gathering intelligence. But there was a vast difference between observing military exercises as an invited guest and exploiting a position of sacred trust to spy. A soft chime announced a visitor at his door. When it slid open, he was surprised to find Queen Aurelia standing there, accompanied by only a single guard who remained discreetly in the corridor. Your Majesty, Malik said, hastily rising and bowing as he had been taught. I wasn't expecting you. Clearly, Aurelia replied, her silver eyes taking in his disheveled appearance and the still active communication pad on his desk. Am I interrupting? Not at all, Malik assured her, gesturing toward the sitting area. Please, come in. Aurelia glided into the room, her movements fluid and graceful as always. Today, she wore simpler attire than usual, a tunic and leggings of deep green, with only minimal silver ornamentation. Her long white hair was bound in a simple braid, rather than the elaborate styles she typically wore for court functions. Your training progresses well, she observed, taking a seat on one of the curved Vaurelian chairs. Krev speaks highly of your adaptability. Malik raised an eyebrow in surprise. That's not the impression he gives me. Something like a smile flickered across Aurelia's face. Krev believes praise breeds complacency. If he truly thought you inadequate, you would know it unmistakably. Malik sat across from her, still marveling at the surreal nature of having the Vaurelian queen in his private quarters. Is it customary for you to personally check on the progress of every guard in training? You are not every guard, Aurelia reminded him. You are my life creditor. That places you in a unique category. She studied him for a moment. You are troubled. It wasn't a question, and Malik saw no point in denying it. I'm trying to reconcile conflicting obligations, he admitted. My duty to Earth Alliance and my new position here. Ah, Aurelia nodded slightly. Ambassador Voss has reminded you of your primary loyalty. Malik stared at her. You know about that conversation? Not its specific content, Aurelia assured him. But I understand human politics well enough to predict its nature. Your superiors wish you to use your position to their advantage. And that doesn't concern you? Aurelia's silver eyes seemed to look through him rather than at him. The life debt creates bonds that transcend political allegiance. Lieutenant Heron, it is older than nations, older than crowns. Whatever information you might gather for your alliance, the debt itself cannot be broken or corrupted. Malik shook his head in confusion. I don't understand how you can be so calm about this. If our positions were reversed, Aurelia interrupted, I would face the same conflict you now face, and I would resolve it according to the dictates of honor. She rose smoothly. Consider this, Lieutenant. The life debt binds us together, but it does not erase our separate identities or obligations. You remain an Earth soldier. I remain Vaurelia's queen. The art lies in finding the path that honors both realities. With that enigmatic statement, she moved toward the door. Tomorrow you will accompany me to the council session. Wear the ceremonial guard armor Krev has provided. And Lieutenant, she paused, looking back at him. Trust your instincts. They have served you well thus far. After she had gone, Malik remained seated, pondering her words. The queen seemed to view the life debt as something that existed outside normal political considerations, a bond that created its own rules and obligations. But how did one navigate such a bond while still honoring other commitments? As he prepared for sleep, watching Vaurelia's 3 moons rise through his window, Malik wondered if he would ever fully understand this alien culture and the traditions that now governed his life. More pressingly, he wondered how he would manage the dangerous political currents he found himself swimming in. Little did he know, those currents were about to become far more treacherous. The Grand Council chamber of Vaurelia resembled an ancient amphitheater, more than a modern governmental facility. Tiered seating rose in a semicircle around a central speaking floor, with the royal dais positioned at the focal point. Crystalline pillars supported a domed ceiling through which the crimson sunlight filtered, casting the entire chamber in a blood-red glow that Malik found distinctly unsettling. He stood at attention behind Queen Aurelia's throne, wearing the ceremonial armor of the royal guard, black scales accented with gold, similar to the queen's own battle armor, but less ornate. The armor felt surprisingly light and moved with his body as if alive, adjusting to his movements with subtle flexes and contractions. At his side hung a ceremonial plasma blade, its hilt warm against his hip. The chamber was filled to capacity with Vaurelian nobles, officials, and military leaders. Malik recognized some from his briefings: the heads of the three major societal castes, the rule keepers who preserved and interpreted law, the warriors who defended Vaurelia, and the ancient scholars who studied plasma genetics and history. Earth Alliance representatives, including Ambassador Voss, occupied a special section to one side, their human forms conspicuous among the taller, more angular Vaurelians. Queen Aurelia sat motionless on her throne, her posture perfect, her expression impassive as the council speaker read out the day's agenda. Malik struggled to follow the proceedings, his grasp of the Vaurelian language still rudimentary despite intensive study. He gathered that the primary topic concerned defense arrangements with Earth Alliance, specifically the sharing of plasma technology and potential joint military exercises. A tall Vaurelian in elaborate military dress rose to address the chamber. Even without understanding every word, Malik could sense the hostility in his tone and stance. "Marshal Serac Vorn," a voice murmured near Malik's ear. He glanced sideways to see one of the other royal guards, Lyria, barely moving her lips as she translated, "Commander of the War Council. He opposes the Earth Alliance." Malik nodded slightly in acknowledgement, grateful for the assistance. Serac Vorn's voice filled the chamber, his elongated fingers gesturing emphatically as he spoke. Through Lyria's whispered translation, Malik understood the gist of his argument. Earth was technologically inferior, culturally incompatible, and strategically unreliable. An alliance would weaken Vaurelia, not strengthen it. As Serac continued, his rhetoric grew more pointed. He gestured toward Malik, his silver eyes narrowed in obvious disdain. "And now, we find our queen bound by life debt to a human soldier," Lyria translated, her voice tight. "A convenient arrangement that gives Earth unprecedented access to our sovereign and our secrets. One might question whether the assassination attempt and this human's heroic intervention were not coordinated parts of an Earth Alliance plot." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Malik kept his expression neutral with effort, though his hand instinctively moved closer to his weapon. Queen Aurelia remained still, showing no reaction to the inflammatory accusation. When Serac finished, Aurelia finally rose. The chamber fell silent immediately. She spoke without raising her voice, yet it carried to every corner of the vast space. "Marshal Serac questions the honor of our potential allies." Lyria translated for Malik. "He suggests conspiracy where there is only courage. I stood on that parade ground. I saw the blade meant for my heart. I felt the human's body take the blow, meant for mine." Aurelia turned slightly, her silver eyes meeting Malik's for a brief moment. "The life debt exists because Lieutenant Heron acted without hesitation to preserve my life. That debt is sacred and personal, transcending politics. It does not compromise Vaurelia. It exemplifies the very honor upon which our civilization is built." She turned back to face the assembly. "As for the proposed alliance, we will proceed with caution but without prejudice. Earth offers resources we need. We possess knowledge they seek. Together, we may stand stronger against common threats." Serac Vorn's ears flattened against his head in obvious displeasure, but he bowed stiffly and returned to his seat. The session continued, moving on to technical discussions of plasma shield compatibility and joint training protocols that stretched Malik's limited Vaurelian vocabulary beyond its limits. When the council finally adjourned hours later, Malik followed Queen Aurelia as she moved through the chamber, acknowledging various officials with nods and brief comments. Ambassador Voss approached, bowing with careful precision. "Your Majesty, an impressive defense of our alliance prospects," Voss said, his diplomatic training evident in his perfectly modulated tone. "Earth Alliance appreciates your vision and support." "Vision and support mean little without concrete action." "Ambassador," Aurelia replied coolly, We await your government's response to our proposal regarding plasma shield technology. The proposal is under review at the highest levels, Voss assured her. His gaze flickered to Malik. Lieutenant Heron, you cut quite the figure in Varillian ceremonial armor, adapting well to your new role. I see. Before Malik could respond, a subtle vibration ran through the floor beneath them. A moment later, a more pronounced tremor shook the chamber, causing crystal fixtures to chime discordantly. Seismic activity? Voss asked, looking concerned. Queen Aurelia's expression sharpened. Virilia does not experience natural seismic events. She turned to her guards. Secure the chamber. The royal guards moved with practiced efficiency, forming a protective circle around Aurelia. Malik found himself automatically taking position at her side, his hand on his plasma blade. The weapon hummed with energy, responding to his heightened alertness. A third tremor, stronger than the previous two, sent cracks racing across the crystalline floor. From these fissures, a strange black mist began to seep upward. Plasma charge! Someone shouted in alarm. The chamber is compromised! Panic erupted as officials and diplomats rushed toward the exits. The royal guards maintained their formation around Queen Aurelia, moving her systematically toward a secure exit at the rear of the chamber. Malik stayed close, scanning the chaos for threats. He spotted it, a moment before anyone else. A shimmer in the air, near one of the crystal pillars. The telltale distortion of an active camouflage field. Without thinking, he shoved past two Varillian guards and threw himself toward Queen Aurelia, knocking her sideways just as a plasma bolt seared through the space where she had been standing. The invisible assailant flickered into visibility as their camouflage failed. A figure in the distinctive black armor of the Syndicate mercenaries, wielding a compact plasma rifle. More shimmer distortions appeared throughout the chamber as other hidden assassins revealed themselves. Black Ring! Malik shouted in warning, drawing his plasma blade. The weapon flared to life in his hand, its energy field extending into a gleaming edge that hummed with deadly potential. The nearest assassin fired again, but Malik was already moving, interposing himself between the attacker and Queen Aurelia. He deflected the plasma bolt with his blade, the impact sending shockwaves up his arm. The Varillian royal guards engaged other attackers, plasma weapons discharging in blinding flashes throughout the chamber. Through the chaos, Malik caught sight of Marshal Serac Vorn. Rather than fighting or fleeing, the War Council commander stood calmly amid the destruction, observing the battle with an expression that could almost be described as satisfied. When his gaze met Malik's across the chamber, Serac's lips curled in what was unmistakably a smile. Before Malik could process the implications of that smile, the assassin he had been engaged with lunged forward, switching from ranged attacks to a vicious plasma dagger. Malik parried desperately, his training with Krev the only thing keeping him alive as the assassin pressed the attack with inhuman speed. "Get the queen to safety!" Malik shouted to the other guards, blocking another strike that sent sparks of plasma cascading around them. "Go!" Queen Aurelia, however, had not retreated. Instead, she had drawn her own weapon, an ancient-looking plasma sword with intricate engravings along its hilt. She moved with deadly grace, her combat training evident in every precise movement, as she engaged another assassin who had broken through the guard perimeter. Malik dispatched his opponent with a lucky thrust that found a gap in the assassin's armor, then rushed to Aurelia's side. Together, they fought back to back, defending each other against the continuing assault. "We need to reach the secure bunker," Aurelia shouted over the chaos. "This way!" She led him toward a concealed door behind the royal dais, cutting down another attacker who tried to block their path. The remaining royal guards formed a protective corridor, sacrificing themselves to clear their queen's escape route. As they reached the hidden door, a massive explosion rocked the chamber. The crystalline ceiling shattered, raining deadly shards down upon the combatants. Malik instinctively pulled Aurelia close, shielding her with his body as crystal fragments sliced through his armor. drawing blood. "This was a coordinated attack," Aurelia said grimly, as they slipped through the doorway into a narrow passage beyond. They knew exactly when and where to strike. "You're Marshal Serac Vorn," Mullick replied, wincing as he felt warm blood trickling down his back from numerous cuts. He was watching the attack, not fighting it, and he looked pleased. Aurelia's silver eyes narrowed dangerously. "Serac has always opposed the Earth Alliance, but treason—" She shook her head. "We will deal with him later. For now, we must reach the secure level." They hurried through the passage, which sloped steeply downward into the bedrock beneath the royal compound. The sounds of battle faded behind them, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by their footsteps and labored breathing. "You saved my life again," Aurelia observed as they descended. "Twice now, you have placed yourself between me and death." "Don't read too much into it," Mullick replied, trying to ignore the pain from his injuries. "I'm just really bad at following orders to stay in the background and observe." A hint of amusement flickered across Aurelia's face. "Your tendency toward inappropriate humor remains consistent. At least." Her expression sobered. "But this complicates matters further. A second life debt, layered upon the first, deepens our bond beyond precedent." Malik was about to respond when they reached the bottom of the passage, emerging into a large circular chamber with walls of solid metal rather than the crystalline materials used throughout the rest of the compound. A dozen Vorelian guards snapped to attention at their arrival. "Your Majesty," one stepped forward, bowing deeply. "We feared the worst when communications went dark." "The council chamber has been attacked," Aurelia informed them. "Marshal Serac Vorn may be implicated in treason. Lock down the entire compound and deploy security teams to locate and apprehend him." As the guards rushed to comply with her orders, Aurelia turned to Malik. "You require medical attention." "I'll survive," Malik assured her, though he could feel his strength ebbing as the adrenaline of combat began to fade. "What happens now?" "Now," Aurelia replied gravely, "we prepare for civil conflict. If Serac has indeed betrayed Vorelia, he will not stand alone. The War Council commands significant military resources, and many share his xenophobic views." She studied Malik with those unsettling silver eyes. "And you, Lieutenant Heron, find yourself caught in a war not of your making, bound to me by debt upon debt." "Story of my life," Malik muttered, swaying slightly as blood loss and exhaustion took their toll. Always in the wrong place at the wrong time. The last thing he saw before consciousness abandoned him was Queen Aurelia, lunging forward to catch him as he fell, her silver eyes wide with what might have been concern. When Malik awoke, he found himself in an unfamiliar chamber, lying on a bed that seemed designed more for Vorelian physiology than human comfort. His wounds had been treated, the familiar cold burning sensation of plasma-based medicine spreading through his body from multiple injection sites. "The human awakens again," a familiar voice observed. "Your resilience is remarkable, Lieutenant Heron." Malik turned his head to see Chief Medical Engineer Tyron standing nearby, monitoring readings on a holographic display. "How long was I out this time?" "Merely 6 hours," Tyron replied. "Your injuries were substantial, but not life-threatening. The crystal fragments caused significant tissue damage, but nothing our regenerative plasma cannot repair." Mullick attempted to sit up, wincing at the stiffness in his muscles. "Queen Aurelia, is she safe?" "The Queen is unharmed, thanks in no small part to your actions," Tyron assured him. "She has been in continuous council with her loyalist commanders since the attack. Marshal Serac Vorn has fled the capital with a significant portion of the War Council's forces. Civil conflict appears imminent." The door to the chamber slid open, and Ambassador Voss entered, looking harried and exhausted. "Lieutenant Heron, thank God you're alive." He glanced at Tyron. "May I have a moment alone with my officer?" Tyron's ears twitched with obvious reluctance, but he nodded. 5 minutes only. The patient requires rest to complete the regenerative process. He exited, the door sealing behind him. Voss moved quickly to Malik's bedside, his voice low and urgent. The situation has deteriorated completely. Serac Vorn has declared Queen Aurelia unfit to rule, claiming she's been compromised by her life debt to you. He's mobilizing forces to liberate the capital from human influence. I gathered as much, Malik replied grimly. What's Earth Alliance's position? Official neutrality, Voss said with visible frustration. Command doesn't want to be drawn into an alien civil war. Unofficially, we're quietly supporting Aurelia's faction, since Serac would terminate all cooperation with Earth if he seized power. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. But that's not why I'm here. We've intercepted communications from the Black Ring mercenaries. They weren't just hired guns. They're part of a larger operation coordinated by Serac, and they're not done yet. What do you mean? They've planted a plasma bomb somewhere in the royal compound, Voss explained. Set to detonate within the next 12 hours. We don't know the exact location, but it's powerful enough to level the entire central district. Malik struggled to process this information through the fog of pain and medication. Have you told Aurelia's security forces? I'm telling you, Voss replied meaningfully. Your position gives you access and credibility that I lack. Queen Aurelia trusts you, perhaps the only human she does trust at this point. Because of the life debt, Malik realized. Exactly. Which is why you need to use that influence now, before thousands die in an explosion that will be blamed on Earth, regardless of who actually planted the bomb. Voss moved toward the door. I've told you all I know. The rest is up to you, Lieutenant. After Voss had gone, Malik forced himself to his feet, ignoring the protest from his healing body. He needed to find Queen Aurelia immediately. As he struggled into a clean uniform provided by the medical staff, the door opened again, revealing Lyria, the royal guard who had translated for him during the council session. Lieutenant Heron, she greeted him with a formal bow. The Queen requests your presence in the command center. Perfect timing, Malik replied. I need to speak with her urgently. Lyria led him through corridors he hadn't seen before, deeper into the secure levels beneath the royal compound. They passed numerous security checkpoints, each more heavily guarded than the last. The Virilian soldiers they encountered regarded Malik with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion, but none challenged his presence at Lyria's side. The command center was a vast circular chamber dominated by a holographic projection of the capital city and surrounding territories. Various sections glowed red, indicating areas under Serac Vorn's control. Queen Aurelia stood at the center of the projection, surrounded by military advisors who fell silent as Malik entered. Lieutenant Heron, Aurelia acknowledged him. You should be resting. There's no time for rest, Your Majesty, Malik replied urgently. I have critical information. He glanced at the assembled Virilian commanders. Private information. Aurelia studied him for a moment, then nodded to her advisors. Leave us. When they had gone, Malik quickly relayed what Ambassador Voss had told him about the plasma bomb. Aurelia listened without interruption, her expression grave. This fits Serac's methods, she said, when he had finished. He prefers to destroy what he cannot control. She turned back to the holographic display. But the compound is vast, with hundreds of potential hiding places for such a device. We need to evacuate, Malik urged. Impossible, Aurelia replied firmly. If I abandon the royal compound, it will be seen as capitulation. Serac's support would swell overnight. She manipulated the holographic controls, zooming in on the compound structure. The bomb must be located and neutralized. In less than 12 hours. With limited personnel we can trust? Malik shook his head. The odds are. I am aware of the odds, Lieutenant, Aurelia interrupted. But there is no alternative. She studied the holographic model intently. If I were Serac, where would I place such a device for maximum effect? Malik moved closer to the display, examining the complex three-dimensional representation of the royal compound. Somewhere central, with access to key structural supports, he mused, and somewhere his agents could reach without attracting attention. His eyes were drawn to a pulsing point near the heart of the structure. What's that? The ancient plasma well, Aurelia replied. A natural formation around which the original palace was built centuries ago. It taps directly into Virelia's plasma mantle, providing energy for the entire compound. That would be the perfect amplifier for a plasma bomb, Malik realized with growing horror. The explosion wouldn't just destroy the compound. It could trigger a chain reaction through the planet's plasma network. Aurelia's silver eyes widened as she grasped the implications. Such an event could devastate the entire capital region, perhaps beyond, she straightened. Decision made. We must inspect the plasma well immediately. Your Majesty, it could be a trap, Malik cautioned. Undoubtedly, she agreed. Which is why you and I will go alone, while my commanders continue coordinating our defense against Serac's forces. If we alert security, or send a large team, we risk tipping off any of Serac's agents who may remain within the compound. Malik wanted to argue, but recognized the logic in her approach. Let me at least inform Ambassador Voss of our plan, he requested. If something happens to us, someone needs to know where to look for the bomb. Aurelia considered this, then nodded. Very well, but be discreet. After Malik sent a brief, encoded message to Voss, they set out for the ancient plasma well, armed only with their personal weapons and a portable scanner calibrated to detect unauthorized plasma signatures. They moved through seldom-used maintenance passages to avoid attention, guided by Aurelia's intimate knowledge of the compound's layout. You know your way around the secret passages pretty well for a queen, Malik observed as they descended a narrow staircase that seemed carved directly from the bedrock. Before I was queen, I was a warrior, Aurelia replied simply. And before that, I was a curious child who explored where she shouldn't. These passages were my playground once. The thought of Aurelia as a child, sneaking through hidden corridors, was strangely humanizing. Malik found himself wondering about her life before the crown, before the weight of rule settled on her shoulders. How does one become Queen of Virelia? He asked, as they continued their descent. Is it purely hereditary, or is there an element of selection? Both, Aurelia answered, after a moment's hesitation. The crown passes through bloodlines, but not automatically to the firstborn. Potential heirs undergo the trials of ascension, tests of wisdom, courage, and sacrifice. Only those who complete the trials may claim the throne. Her voice took on a distant quality. I was the third child, not expected to rule, but my siblings failed their trials. I did not. What happened to them? Malik asked, then immediately regretted his curiosity. Sorry, that's probably too personal. My brother died during his trial of courage, Aurelia said quietly. My sister abandoned her trial of sacrifice, choosing exile rather than the crown. I have not seen her in 20 years. Before Malik could respond, they reached the bottom of the staircase, emerging onto a narrow walkway that circled a vast, open shaft. The air here was noticeably warmer, carrying a metallic tang that made Malik's skin prickle. Far below, something glowed with a pulsing, reddish light. The ancient plasma well, Aurelia announced. The lifeblood of Virelia flows up from the planetary core through this channel, providing energy for our civilization for thousands of years. Malik activated the scanner, sweeping it in a slow arc around the chamber. I'm picking up powerful plasma signatures, but that's to be expected given the nature of this place. The scanner can't differentiate between natural plasma and a potential bomb against this background. Then we must search manually, Aurelia decided. The maintenance platforms will give us access to the well shaft itself. They descended further, using a series of platforms that spiraled down the sides of the vast shaft. The heat increased dramatically the lower they went, until Malik's uniform was soaked with sweat, and even Aurelia, with her species' greater tolerance for extreme temperatures, showed signs of discomfort. "There," Malik said suddenly, pointing to an anomaly on the shaft wall. "That doesn't look like part of the original structure." Attached to the rock face was a device about the size of a small suitcase, its surface reflecting the reddish glow from below. As they approached cautiously, Malik could see holographic symbols flickering across its surface, a countdown timer showing less than 3 hours remaining. "That's it," he confirmed grimly. "And we have less time than we thought." Aurelia studied the device without touching it. Serac must have accelerated the timeline when he realized his initial assassination attempt failed. Malik knelt to examine the bomb more closely. "This is military-grade hardware, not some improvised device. Plasma compression chamber, temporal detonator, reinforced containment field. This thing is designed to channel the explosion directly into the well." "Can you disarm it?" Aurelia asked. "Maybe, if I had the right tools and several hours," Malik replied honestly. "But we have neither." "Then we must remove it from the well," Aurelia decided. "If we can get it to the surface and far enough from the compound—" "It's physically secured to the shaft wall," Malik interrupted, pointing to heavy metal brackets that had been fused directly into the rock. "We'd need heavy cutting equipment to free it." Aurelia's expression hardened. "Then there is only one option remaining. We must contain the blast within the well itself." She manipulated a control panel on the maintenance platform, bringing up a holographic schematic of the shaft. "If we activate the emergency containment shields at these junctures, we can isolate this section of the well. The explosion will still be devastating, but its energy will be directed downward, into the planetary core, rather than upward into the compound." "Won't that cause geological instability?" Malik asked, concerned. "Potentially," Aurelia acknowledged. "But Vorelia's core has absorbed greater plasma disruptions in the past. It is a calculated risk, but preferable to the certainty of thousands of deaths above." They moved quickly to implement the plan, activating ancient emergency systems that had never been used in living memory. Massive plasma shields began to materialize at strategic points along the well shaft, their energy fields humming with power. "The upper shields are responding," Aurelia reported, monitoring the holographic display. "But the lower containment field is failing to initialize. The system must have degraded over centuries of disuse." "What does that mean?" Malik asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "It means someone must go down to the lower control node and activate it manually," Aurelia replied grimly. "Otherwise, the explosion will simply travel down the well and emerge elsewhere, potentially with even greater destructive force." Before Malik could volunteer, Aurelia continued, "I will go. I know the ancient systems better than you do." "Absolutely not," Malik objected immediately. "You're the queen. Vorelia needs you, especially now with Serac in open rebellion." "And who would you suggest instead? You?" Aurelia's silver eyes flashed. "You know nothing of Aurelian plasma technology." "I'm a quick study," Malik insisted. "Just tell me what to do." "There isn't time for a tutorial," Aurelia countered. "And this is my responsibility. My people, my compound, my planet." "And my life debt," Malik reminded her. "Twice over, remember? How can I let you walk into what might be certain death?" Aurelia's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "The life debt binds me to preserve your life, Lieutenant Heron, not the other way around." "That's not how I see it," Malik said firmly. "Where I come from, debts go both ways. You've protected me, given me a place in your guard, Trusted me when others wouldn't. I owe you too." For a long moment, they stared at each other, human and Virelian, separated by biology and culture, yet connected by something neither fully understood. Finally, Aurelia nodded. "Then we go together," she decided. "Two are more likely to succeed than one, and if we fail, at least the debt between us will be settled in the most absolute way." They descended to the lowest platform, where the heat became almost unbearable. The control node was an ancient piece of technology, its surfaces inscribed with symbols Malik couldn't begin to decipher. Aurelia worked quickly, her elongated fingers dancing across the controls with practiced precision, despite the extreme conditions. "The manual override requires sustained input," she explained as she worked. "One of us must remain here to maintain the field, while the other returns to the upper levels to coordinate the final shield activation." "I'll stay," Malik volunteered immediately. "No," Aurelia shook her head. "Your human physiology cannot withstand these temperatures for the necessary duration. I will remain." "And I told you, that's not acceptable," Malik insisted. "You're too important to Virelia." "And you are important to Earth," Aurelia countered. "This argument wastes precious time we do not have." The bomb's countdown continued relentlessly. Less than 30 minutes remained. "There must be another way," Malik said desperately, scanning the ancient control systems. "Some way to lock the controls in place, without requiring someone to stay behind." Aurelia hesitated, then spoke reluctantly. "There is one possibility. The ancient queens developed a method to bind plasma controls to their life force in times of emergency. A blood lock." "What does that entail?" Malik asked. "A direct connection between living tissue and the plasma system," Aurelia explained. "The ancient plasma responds to the life energy of Virelian royalty. It would hold the containment field stable until—" She trailed off. "Until what?" Malik pressed. "Until death," Aurelia finished simply. "The connection, once established, cannot be broken while life remains. It is a last resort, used only when sacrifice is necessary for the greater good." Malik stared at her in horror. "That's not a solution. There has to be another way." "There is not," Aurelia stated with finality. "And as queen, the responsibility is mine alone." Before Malik could protest further, the platform beneath them shuddered violently. From above came the sound of weapons fire and shouting voices. "We have company," Malik observed grimly, drawing his plasma blade. "Serac must have realized we discovered the bomb." Aurelia's expression hardened. "Go. Defend the upper access point. I will complete the containment preparations." For once, Malik didn't argue. He sprinted up the spiral walkway, his plasma blade humming with deadly energy. At the midpoint of the shaft, he encountered the first of Serac's soldiers, black-armored Virelians wielding heavy plasma rifles. "Halt in the name of Marshal Serac Vorn," one commanded. "The human collaborator is to be executed immediately." Malik didn't bother responding verbally. His blade moved in the patterns Krev had drilled into him, deflecting plasma bolts and slicing through armor. He fought with desperate intensity, knowing that every second he could delay Serac's forces gave Aurelia more time to prepare the containment field. More soldiers poured onto the walkway, forcing Malik to retreat step by step. A plasma bolt grazed his shoulder, searing through flesh and sending waves of agony down his arm. He stumbled, nearly falling from the narrow platform into the abyss below. And then, unexpectedly, help arrived. Lyria and a squad of royal guards burst through an access door, engaging Serac's forces from behind. Caught in the crossfire, the black-armored soldiers fell quickly. "Lieutenant Heron," Lyria called out. "Ambassador Voss informed us of your mission. Where is the Queen?" "Below," Malik gasped, clutching his wounded shoulder. "She's attempting to contain a plasma bomb. We need to hold this position at all costs." Lyria nodded grimly. "We stand with you." Together, They formed a defensive perimeter at the midpoint of the shaft. Wave after wave of Sirac's soldiers attacked, but the combined might of Malik's desperation and the Royal Guard's training held them at bay. Then, a more formidable opponent appeared. Marshal Sirac Vorn himself stepped onto the walkway, his imposing figure encased in battle armor, far more elaborate than his soldiers. In his hand, he held a plasma weapon unlike any Malik had seen, an ancient-looking spear that pulsed with dark energy. "The human pet still lives," Sirac observed, his voice carrying easily across the distance. "How unfortunate." "The only unfortunate one here is you, Sirac," Malik replied, straightening despite his injuries. "Treason, attempted regicide, mass murder. Your legacy won't be what you hoped." "My legacy will be Vorilia's salvation," Sirac declared. "Purged of alien influence and restored to its rightful place of dominance." He raised his spear. "Beginning with your death, human." The battle that followed tested Malik to his limits. Sirac was a warrior with centuries of experience, wielding his ancient plasma spear with devastating skill. Malik's human reflexes, though enhanced by adrenaline and desperation, were barely sufficient to keep him alive. A vicious strike from Sirac's spear shattered Malik's plasma blade, the feedback sending him sprawling across the walkway. Sirac advanced for the killing blow, his silver eyes gleaming with triumph. "Your queen cannot save you now, human," he gloated. "She will join you in death when my bomb detonates, and Virilia will be cleansed of your corrupting influence." Malik, weaponless and wounded, glared up at him. "You've already lost, Sirac. The bomb is being contained as we speak." Fury twisted Sirac's features. "Impossible! The lower containment field cannot be activated without—" He broke off, sudden understanding dawning in his eyes. "The bloodlock. She wouldn't dare." "She would," Malik confirmed grimly. "For Virilia, for her people, even for an arrogant traitor like you who doesn't deserve her sacrifice." With a roar of rage, Sirac raised his spear for the killing thrust. But before the blow could fall, a blinding flash of plasma energy erupted from below, followed by a shockwave that shook the entire shaft. The walkway buckled beneath them, sending both Malik and Sirac tumbling over the edge. Malik caught the railing with his good arm, hanging precariously over the abyss. Sirac was less fortunate. He fell, his scream fading as he plummeted into the depths of the well. With the last of his strength, Malik pulled himself back onto the damaged walkway. The bomb must have detonated, but the containment field appeared to be holding. The explosion's energy was being channeled downward, away from the compound above. But that meant Aurelia had completed the bloodlock, that she was still down there, bound to the ancient plasma controls, keeping the containment field stable at the cost of her own life. "No!" Malik gasped, forcing himself to his feet. "Not like this." He staggered down the spiral walkway, ignoring Lyria's shouts to wait, to be careful. The heat intensified as he descended, becoming almost unbearable. Plasma energy surged around him, the air itself seeming to shimmer and warp. At the lowest platform, he found her. Queen Aurelia Vex knelt before the ancient control node. One arm plunged wrist-deep into what appeared to be living plasma. Her body trembled with the strain, but her back remained straight. Her posture still regal, even in this desperate moment. "Aurelia!" Malik called out, stumbling toward her. Her head turned slowly, silver eyes finding his. To his surprise, a small smile curved her lips. "Lieutenant Heron, you survived. Good." "We need to get you out of here," Malik insisted, reaching for her. "The bomb has detonated. The immediate danger is past." "The containment field must be maintained until the plasma stabilizes," Aurelia replied, her voice strangely calm. "A few minutes more, perhaps." Malik knelt beside her, examining the connection between her arm and the pulsing plasma. "There has to be a way to break the bloodlock without—" "There is not," Aurelia interrupted gently. This was my choice. Lieutenant, my duty as queen. Malik, he corrected her. After all this, I think you can use my name. Her smile widened slightly. Malik. Then, she studied his face with those silver eyes that had once seemed so alien to him. You are a strange human. Twice you risked your life for mine, creating a life debt I can never repay. And now, you come to save me from my own sacrifice, as if the debt flows both ways. It does, Malik insisted. That's what I've been trying to tell you, where I come from. We don't keep ledgers of who owes what to whom. We just care. We protect each other because it's right, not because of some ancient law. Perhaps your way has merit, Aurelia acknowledged. Though it comes too late for me. The platform shuddered again as another plasma surge rippled through the well. Aurelia's body jerked in response, her face contorting in momentary pain. The containment field is stabilizing, she reported. Soon it will hold without the bloodlock. And then we can get you out of here, Malik said firmly. Aurelia shook her head slowly. The bloodlock can only be broken by death. Malik, once initiated, it is irreversible. That's unacceptable, Malik declared, his mind racing. There has to be a way to override it, to trick the system somehow. You refuse to accept the inevitable, Aurelia observed. Another strange human trait. It's called hope, Malik told her. And sometimes it works. He examined the ancient control node more carefully, noting how the plasma seemed to flow from Aurelia's arm into the machinery, creating a circuit of energy. The bloodlock wasn't just a physical connection. It was an energy exchange, a flow of life force sustaining the containment field. An idea formed in his mind, desperate, probably suicidal, but possibly their only chance. What if the bloodlock could be transferred, from you to someone else? Aurelia's silver eyes widened. Theoretically possible, but only to another of royal blood. And even then, it would merely shift the sacrifice, not eliminate it. I'm not talking about royal blood, Malik clarified. I'm talking about mine. Impossible, Aurelia stated flatly. Human physiology is incompatible with ancient plasma. The transfer would kill you instantly. But it might break your connection, Malik persisted. And my wounds from the plasma blade. They were treated with Virilian plasma medicine, right? There's already plasma in my system, adapted to my physiology. A small amount, used as a healing agent, Aurelia corrected. Nothing like the raw power of the ancient well. Malik, what you suggest is suicide. Maybe, he acknowledged. But I've never been good at accepting no-win scenarios. He met her gaze steadily. Let me try. Please. For a long moment, Aurelia studied him, her silver eyes unreadable. Then, finally, she nodded. The transfer requires physical contact between the current conduit, myself, and the new one. If you truly wish to attempt this madness, place your hand upon mine where it enters the plasma. Malik didn't hesitate. He reached out, laying his palm over Aurelia's wrist, where it disappeared into the swirling plasma. Immediately, he felt a searing pain, unlike anything he had ever experienced, as if his very atoms were being torn apart and reassembled. He wanted to scream, to pull away, but forced himself to maintain contact. Through the haze of agony, he heard Aurelia's voice, chanting in ancient Virilian, words he didn't understand, but felt resonate within his very being. The pain intensified, becoming a white-hot inferno that consumed his consciousness. And then, suddenly, release. Malik found himself on his knees. His arm plunged into the plasma where Aurelia's had been. The queen herself lay beside him, free of the connection but deathly still. Aurelia, he gasped, fighting to remain conscious against the overwhelming pain of the bloodlock. Aurelia, wake up! To his immense relief, her eyes fluttered open. She stared at him in disbelief. "It worked? Impossible!" "Apparently not," Malik managed through gritted teeth. "The containment field?" Aurelia glanced at the holographic displays. "Holding stable. The plasma surge is dissipating." Her expression shifted to concern. "But you cannot maintain the bloodlock for long. Your human physiology is surprisingly stubborn," Malik finished for her. "How much longer until the field can sustain itself?" "Minutes only," Aurelia replied, struggling to sit up. "But Malik, even a few minutes may be too long. The plasma is consuming your life energy at an accelerated rate." "Then we'd better not waste time," Malik said, attempting a smile despite the agony. "Tell me about Virelia. What's it like when it's not on the brink of civil war?" Understanding his intention to distract himself from the pain, Aurelia began to speak. She told him of Virelia's crystal forests that sang in the wind, of the annual festival of plasma lights, when the night sky erupted in natural displays of color, of the ancient libraries carved into mountain faces, where the history of her people was preserved in living plasma script. As she spoke, Malik felt his strength ebbing. The bloodlock drew relentlessly on his life force, draining him to sustain the containment field. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision, and his heartbeat became irregular, stuttering and racing by turns. "The containment field is stabilizing on its own," Aurelia reported suddenly, her voice seeming to come from very far away. "Just a little longer. Malik, hold on." He tried to respond, but his lips would not move. The plasma pulsed around his arm, no longer simply painful, but feeling as though it was becoming part of him, restructuring his cellular makeup at the most fundamental level. His last coherent thought was that he had fulfilled the life debt after all, a life for a life. Then darkness claimed him completely. Malik drifted through a void of swirling red and gold energy. There was no pain here, no body to feel pain with, just consciousness suspended in plasma, aware but detached. Time had no meaning in this place. He could have been here for seconds or centuries. Voices reached him occasionally, distant and indistinct. Someone calling his name, hands touching what should have been his body. But he remained adrift, untethered, until something anchored him, a connection, a tug on his essence that grew steadily stronger, not pulling him back to his body, but binding him to something else, something ancient and powerful that had never touched human consciousness before. Knowledge flowed into him. The history of Aurelia, not as written records but as living memory. The formation of the planet from cosmic dust and plasma. The emergence of the first Virelian life forms, evolving in symbiosis with the planetary plasma currents. The rise and fall of civilizations. The unification under the ancient queens. The development of the life debt tradition as a means of transcending tribal hatreds. And beneath it all, the consciousness of the planet itself, not sentient as humans or Virelians understood sentience, but aware in its own vast, geological way, alive. Malik felt himself being drawn back, away from this communion with Virelia's essence. A voice called to him, insistent and familiar. Silver eyes appeared in the void, beckoning. "Return, Lieutenant Malik Heron. Your debt is not yet fulfilled." With a gasping breath that felt like his first, Malik returned to his body. The sensation was overwhelming, every nerve ending alight, every cell humming with energy that was not entirely his own. His eyes opened to blinding brightness, then gradually focused on the face hovering above him. Queen Aurelia Vex looked different somehow. The same silver eyes and elongated ears, the same regal features. But there was something new in her expression as she gazed down at him, a softness that had not been there before. "Welcome back," she said simply. Malik tried to speak, but found his throat dry and uncooperative. A Virelian medical attendant, not Tyron, but someone unfamiliar, offered him water, supporting his head as he drank. "How long?" he finally managed to ask, his voice a hoarse whisper. 19 days, Aurelia replied. You have been in what Chief Medical Engineer Tyron calls a plasma regenerative stasis, since the ancient plasma well incident. 19 days. Malik tried to process this information through the fog that still clouded his mind. Serac? The Civil War. Marshal Serac Vorn perished in the well, Aurelia informed him. Without his leadership, the rebellion quickly fragmented. Most of his followers have surrendered and pledged renewed loyalty to the crown. The bomb? Fully contained. The planetary plasma network experienced significant disruption, but no permanent damage. Aurelia's expression grew more serious. Thanks to your sacrifice. Malik attempted to sit up but found his body unresponsive. I can't move. A temporary condition, the medical attendant assured him. Your nervous system is still recalibrating after prolonged plasma exposure. Function should return gradually over the next few days. Recalibrating? Malik repeated, confused. What exactly happened to me down there? Aurelia and the attendant exchanged a glance. Perhaps this discussion should wait until you have regained more strength, Aurelia suggested. No, Malik insisted. Tell me now, please. After a moment's hesitation, Aurelia nodded to the attendant, who bowed and exited the room, leaving them alone. The queen moved to sit beside Malik's bed, her posture more relaxed than he had ever seen it. The bloodlock should have killed you, she began, without preamble. No human has ever survived direct contact with ancient plasma, much less the energy transfer required by the bloodlock ritual. Yet you did. How? Malik asked, genuinely bewildered. We are not entirely certain, Aurelia admitted. Tyron believes it has something to do with your previous plasma wound and the regenerative treatment you received. Your body had already begun adapting to Virillian plasma at a cellular level. She paused. But there may be another factor. The ancient well is not merely a source of energy. It is connected to Virilia's deepest history, to the planet itself. Some believe it possesses a form of awareness, a capacity to choose. Choose? Malik echoed, incredulous. You're saying a geological formation decided to keep me alive? I am saying, Aurelia replied carefully, that you were exposed to forces beyond our full understanding, and you emerged, changed. Changed how, exactly? Malik asked, a new worry forming. In answer, Aurelia reached for a reflective panel beside the bed, angling it so Malik could see his own face. The man who stared back at him was recognizably himself, but with subtle, unsettling differences. His eyes, once dark brown, now held flecks of silver that caught the light like tiny stars. Fine traceries of silver ran beneath his skin, visible when he moved, like circuits of plasma energy flowing through his veins. What am I? He whispered. You are still Malik Heron, Aurelia assured him. Still human, primarily. But you now carry Virillian plasma within you, integrated with your cellular structure. You are the first of your kind, a human with a direct connection to the living essence of Virilia. Malik stared at his reflection, trying to reconcile the stranger in the mirror with his sense of self. And what does that mean for me? That remains to be discovered, Aurelia replied. The ancient scholars believe you may develop certain capabilities as your body fully adapts. Enhanced strength and healing, sensitivity to plasma energy, perhaps more. But there will likely be challenges as well. Such as? Potential cellular instability, periods of energy fluctuation, the need for regular exposure to Virillian plasma to maintain equilibrium. Aurelia's expression softened. And a permanent connection to this planet, regardless of where your duties might take you in the future. The implication was clear. Malik could never fully return to his old life. Earth's environment lacked the plasma saturation his modified physiology would require. He was bound to Virilia now, not just by duty or life debt, but by biological necessity. Ambassador Voss will be thrilled, Malik remarked with gallows humor. His observer has gone native in the most literal sense possible. To his surprise, Aurelia laughed, a genuine sound of amusement he had never heard from her before. The ambassador has indeed expressed concerns about your transformation, but he has also recognized the diplomatic opportunities it presents. Diplomatic opportunities? Malik raised an eyebrow. You are now a living bridge between our species, Aurelia explained. Proof that humans and Virilians can integrate at the most fundamental level. The High Council sees you as a powerful symbol of our potential alliance. So I'm a political symbol now? Malik wasn't sure how he felt about that. You are much more than that, Aurelia corrected him. Her voice took on a formal quality. Lieutenant Malik Heron, in the 19 days you have been unconscious, much has changed. The life debt between us has evolved beyond precedent. How so? Malik asked cautiously. When you took the bloodlock from me, you did more than save my life. You bound yourself to Virilia itself. Such a sacrifice goes beyond anything accounted for in our ancient laws. Aurelia's silver eyes held his. The High Council has unanimously decreed that only one response is appropriate. You are to be named Nusuki Vishant, Ambassador of the Great Debt, with status equal to a member of the royal family. Malik blinked in surprise. That sounds significant. It is unprecedented, Aurelia confirmed. No non-Virilian has ever held such a position. You will have a permanent place in the royal court, a voice in the High Council, and the authority to act as intermediary between our worlds. It was too much to process at once. His physical transformation, his new political status, the permanent alteration of his future. Malik closed his eyes, trying to center himself. And what about you? He asked finally, opening his eyes to look at Aurelia directly. Where do you stand in all this? The queen was silent for a long moment, studying him with those unsettling silver eyes that now partially mirrored his own. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, less formal. I stand in a place I never expected to find myself, she admitted. When you first jumped in front of that blade for me, I saw it as a complication, a human entangled in our ancient traditions, creating diplomatic and political difficulties. When you saved me a second time, I saw it as admirable but foolhardy. But when you took the bloodlock, she paused, seeming to search for words. No one has ever made such a sacrifice for me, not as Aurelia, only as queen. I didn't do it for the queen, Malik said quietly. I did it for you. Something flickered in Aurelia's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or understanding. And that, Lieutenant Heron, is why everything has changed between us. The life debt tradition assumes a formal, almost transactional relationship between debtor and creditor, but you have consistently acted from different motivations. Human motivations, Malik suggested. Perhaps, Aurelia acknowledged. Or perhaps simply the motivations of someone who sees beyond tradition and protocol to the person beneath. She hesitated, then reached out to place her hand over his. Whatever they are, I find I have developed a certain appreciation for them. The touch of her hand sent a strange sensation through Malik. Not unpleasant, but intense. He could feel the plasma in his veins responding to her proximity, creating a subtle resonance between them. We share a connection now, Aurelia explained, clearly sensing his reaction. The ancient plasma that flows through you responds to my presence, as royal blood has always been attuned to the planet's energy. Is that going to be awkward at diplomatic functions? Malik asked, attempting to lighten the suddenly intimate mood. Aurelia's lips curved in that almost smile he had come to recognize. It will certainly make the traditional formalities more interesting. She withdrew her hand, resuming a more proper distance. Rest now. Your body needs time to complete its adaptation. We will speak more when you are stronger. She rose gracefully, Moving toward the door, before exiting, she turned back. Malik, thank you, not for the symbolic acts of saving the queen, but for seeing Aurelia beneath the crown. Few ever have. After she had gone, Malik lay in the quiet medical chamber, contemplating his new reality. His body felt foreign, yet familiar, human, yet alien. His future had been irrevocably altered, his path diverted from everything he had planned or expected. Yet, strangely, he felt no regret, only a sense of purpose he had never experienced before, a connection not just to Aurelia and Virilia, but to something larger than himself, a role in bridging two worlds that needed each other more than either would admit. As he drifted back to sleep, plasma energy flowing through his modified veins, Malik wondered what Ambassador Voss would make of his final report. Observer becomes observed. Human becomes something more. Life debt becomes whatever this was becoming. Not the mission he had signed up for, certainly, but perhaps the one he had been meant for all along. The weeks that followed brought gradual recovery and adaptation. Malik's body slowly relearned its functions, though everything felt different, enhanced in some ways, limited in others. His strength returned greater than before, his reflexes sharper, his senses more acute. But there were drawbacks as well. Periods of energy fluctuation when the plasma in his system would surge painfully, or ebb, to leave him exhausted. Chief Medical Engineer Tyron and his team worked tirelessly to help Malik understand and manage his new physiology. The integration progresses well, Tyron reported during one examination, studying holographic displays of Malik's cellular structure. The plasma pathways have stabilized in your major organ systems. However, your cerebral integration remains unusual. Unusual how? Malik asked, watching the swirling patterns of light that represented his brain activity. Your neural pathways show signs of restructuring, Tyron explained clinically. The plasma appears to be creating new connections, particularly in areas associated with memory and spatial awareness. Is that dangerous? Malik was understandably concerned about changes to his brain. Unknown, Tyron admitted. We have no precedent for human plasma neural integration. The process appears controlled rather than chaotic, which suggests purpose rather than damage. But he trailed off, his elongated ears twitching in what Malik had come to recognize as scientific frustration. But I'm a walking experiment, Malik finished for him. A unique phenomenon, Tyron corrected, somewhat primly. One that is providing invaluable data on cross-species adaptation. Glad to be scientifically useful, Malik remarked dryly. As his physical recovery progressed, Malik's new political role began to take shape. Ambassador Voss, initially alarmed by Malik's transformation, quickly recognized the strategic advantage of having a human who was literally integrated with Virilian essence. Earth Command is cautiously optimistic about your new status, Voss informed him during one of his regular visits. They've officially reclassified you as a special diplomatic attaché rather than a military observer. Your formal rank remains, but your reporting structure now runs through diplomatic channels. Meaning I answer to you instead of military command, Malik interpreted. For now, Voss nodded. Though given your unique circumstances, there's talk of creating an entirely new designation. No one quite knows what to do with a human who's partially Virilian and holds quasi-royal status. Malik had to laugh at that. Join the club. His first official function as Nusuki Vishand came 6 weeks after the well incident. The ceremony was held in the newly restored Grand Council chamber, which had been rebuilt with reinforced plasma shields and enhanced security measures following Serac's attack. Representatives from both Virilia and Earth Alliance were present, along with delegates from neighboring star systems, curious about the unprecedented alliance forming between the two powers. Malik stood on the central platform beside Queen Aurelia, dressed in ceremonial attire that blended elements of Virilian royal garb with Earth Alliance formal uniform. The silver traceries beneath his skin were visible on his hands and face, glowing subtly in response to the plasma-rich environment of the chamber. He was acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes upon him, Vaurelian silver and human varied, all studying this strange hybrid being who symbolized their potential future together. Queen Aurelia addressed the assembly, her voice clear and commanding. Today, we witness the formalization of a bond unprecedented in our history. Lieutenant Malik Heron of Earth stepped between death and Vaurelia's queen, creating a life debt of the highest order. In fulfilling that debt, he bound himself not just to the crown, but to Vaurelia itself, becoming the first human to carry our sacred plasma within his being. She turned to Malik, meeting his gaze directly. The ancient laws of life debt speak of obligation and repayment, of balance restored through service or sacrifice. Yet what we have witnessed transcends these traditional concepts. Lieutenant Heron's actions were not taken for political advantage or personal gain, but from a quality humans call compassion, a willingness to risk all for another, simply because it is right. Murmurs ran through the assembly at this statement. The concept was not entirely alien to Vaurelians, but to hear it formally acknowledged by the Queen was remarkable. In recognition of this transcendent bond, Aurelia continued, the High Council has unanimously decreed that Lieutenant Malik Heron shall henceforth be known as Nusuki Vashand, Ambassador of the Great Debt, with all rights and responsibilities that title entails. She reached out, taking Malik's hand in a formal clasp. The plasma within him surged in response to her touch, creating a visible glow where their hands met. Gasps of surprise and wonder rose from the assembly. The life debt between us is hereby transformed, Aurelia declared. No longer creditor and debtor, but partners in a greater purpose, the union of our worlds in mutual respect and common cause. Ambassador Voss stepped forward then, representing Earth Alliance. Earth acknowledges and honors this extraordinary bond between Lieutenant Heron and Queen Aurelia Vex. We recognize his new status as Nusuki Vashand and commit to working through him to forge a lasting alliance between our civilizations. The formal declarations continued, with various officials from both sides presenting ceremonial gifts and pledges. Throughout it all, Malik maintained his composure, though the intense plasma environment of the chamber and the emotional significance of the moment taxed his still adapting physiology. By the time the ceremony concluded, he was fighting exhaustion, the silver traceries beneath his skin pulsing erratically, with his efforts to remain steady. Aurelia noticed, of course. As the assembly began to disperse, she discreetly guided him toward a private antechamber, dismissing the attendants with a gesture. You pushed yourself too hard, she observed once they were alone. Tyron warned that prolonged ceremonial functions might strain your plasma regulation. Malik sank gratefully onto a bench, his formal posture giving way to genuine fatigue. Worth it, he assured her. The Alliance needed this symbolic moment. Aurelia studied him with those silver eyes that seemed to see through all pretense. Always placing duty first, she noted. A trait we share, though our definitions of duty have perhaps evolved. Speaking of evolution, Malik said, flexing his hand where the silver traceries glowed more prominently now. There's something I haven't told Tyron or the medical team yet. Aurelia tilted her head inquiringly, her elongated ears perking forward slightly in interest. What is it? I've been remembering things I shouldn't know, Malik admitted. Seeing places on Vaurelia I've never visited. Recognizing people I've never met. The neural integration Tyron mentioned, Aurelia suggested, showing no surprise. You knew this would happen? Malik asked. I suspected it might, she acknowledged. The ancient well contains more than plasma energy. It holds the collective memory of Vaurelia, imprinted in the planet's very essence. When you bonded with it through the bloodlock, you connected to that memory. Malik absorbed this information, trying to reconcile it with his experiences. Yesterday, I found myself thinking in ancient Varelian, not just a few words, but complex thoughts in a language I've never studied. I knew the names of stars visible from Varelia 10,000 years ago, before your people had even developed spaceflight. The memories will likely continue to emerge, Aurelia told him. Not systematically, but as fragments, intuitions, knowledge that surfaces when relevant. So I'm carrying the memories of your entire civilization? The concept was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. A fraction only, Aurelia assured him. The human mind, even enhanced by plasma, could not contain the totality. But yes, you now hold within you aspects of Varelia's deepest past, knowledge that even our ancient scholars can only speculate about. Malik ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the implications. And how does that affect my role as Nusuki Vishand? As mediator between our worlds? Aurelia moved to sit beside him, her formal robes rustling softly. Today, she wore deep purple with silver embroidery that matched the traceries in his skin, a detail he suspected was not coincidental. It makes you uniquely qualified, she said simply. You understand both worlds from within, Earth through your birth and upbringing, Varelia through the plasma bond and ancestral memories. You can translate between perspectives in a way no other being can. That's assuming I don't go mad from having two civilizations battling in my head, Malik pointed out, only half joking. You won't, Aurelia said with certainty. Your mind is remarkably adaptable. Another reason you survived the bloodlock when no other human could have. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the tension of the formal ceremony gradually dissipating. Malik became aware of the subtle resonance between them, the plasma in his system responding to her proximity, creating a connection that transcended ordinary interaction. This connection between us, he began cautiously. Is it always going to be this intense? Aurelia considered the question. The plasma resonance will likely stabilize as your integration completes, but the fundamental connection, what you might call attunement, will remain. And how does that work with your role as queen? Having a human permanently attuned to your presence seems like it could be politically complicated. Many things about this situation are politically complicated, Aurelia acknowledged with a hint of dry humor. But the High Council has adapted to the reality more quickly than I expected. Your actions during the Well crisis earned you significant respect among even the most traditional factions. And what about you? Malik asked, echoing the question he had posed in the medical chamber weeks earlier. Beyond politics and tradition and life debts, where do you stand in all this? Aurelia's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. I stand in a place of discovery. Malik Heron. For centuries, I have ruled according to tradition and precedent, my path predetermined by ancient laws and expectations. Your presence, your actions, have introduced variables I never anticipated. Her silver eyes met his. I find the experience not unwelcome. Coming from Aurelia, this was tantamount to a declaration of profound change. Malik recognized the significance of her admission, the formidable queen of Varelia acknowledging that a human had disrupted her carefully ordered existence in ways she valued rather than resented. Before he could respond, a discreet chime announced someone at the door. Aurelia straightened, her expression returning to its more customary regal composure. Enter, she commanded. A royal guard, Lyria, who had fought alongside Malik during the Well crisis, appeared in the doorway. Your Majesty, Nusuki Vishand, she greeted them formally. Forgive the interruption, but there is an urgent matter requiring attention. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity at the outer system plasma node. The pattern matches black ring signatures. Malik felt a chill at the mention of the mercenary group that had been involved in both assassination attempts. I thought the black ring dispersed after Sirach's death. Most did, Lyria confirmed. But intelligence suggests a remnant faction has regrouped under new leadership. They appear to be targeting the plasma harvesting stations in the outer system. The plasma node is vital to our planetary defense network, Aurelia said grimly, rising to her feet. If compromised, it could leave us vulnerable to attack. Malik stood as well, his fatigue forgotten in the face of this new threat. The ceremonial alliance we just formalized is about to face its first test. Aurelia nodded. Indeed. And you, Nusuki Vishand, will be central to our response. She turned to Lyria. Summon the War Council and the Earth Alliance representatives. We meet in the Strategic Command Center in 30 minutes. As Lyria departed to carry out these orders, Aurelia and Malik exchanged a look of shared understanding. The peaceful ceremony that had just concluded was merely the beginning. The real work of alliance, forged in crisis, tested by threat, lay ahead. Malik felt the plasma within him respond to the moment. Energy flowing through his veins with renewed purpose. Whatever came next, he would face it as neither fully human nor Virilian, but as something new, a bridge between worlds, bound by a debt that had transformed into something far greater than obligation. In the Grand Palace Plaza, 3 months later, Malik stood beside Queen Aurelia, watching as the massive sculpture was unveiled, crafted from plasma-infused crystal. It depicted two weapons crossed in unity, a traditional Virilian plasma sword and an Earth Alliance plasma rifle, their energies merging at the point of intersection to create a brilliant, pulsing light. The Monument of United Species, Aurelia announced to the assembled crowd of Virilians and humans, a symbol of what we have achieved together and what we may yet accomplish. The defeat of the Black Ring Remnant had been swift and decisive, thanks to the coordinated efforts of Virilian and Earth forces. With Malik acting as both tactical advisor and cultural interpreter, the alliance had demonstrated its effectiveness in combat, cementing a military partnership that had previously existed only on paper. More importantly, the shared victory had broken down barriers of mistrust between the species. Humans and Virilians had fought side by side, protected each other, celebrated together. The formal political alliance was now supported by genuine bonds of comradeship and respect. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Malik and Aurelia remained before the monument, studying its symbolic representation of their journey. When I first arrived on Virilia, I never imagined standing here like this, Malik remarked. An observer was supposed to be invisible, forgettable. And instead, you became unforgettable, Aurelia replied, the faintest smile touching her lips. The human who changed Virilia's destiny by jumping in front of a blade? Malik glanced down at his hands, where the silver traceries of plasma energy glowed softly beneath his skin, a permanent reminder of how completely his life had been transformed by that split-second decision. Worth it, he said simply. Aurelia's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. The plasma within him resonated with her touch, creating the familiar connection that had deepened between them over the months of working together to build the alliance. The life debt has been fulfilled many times over, she observed. Yet something more enduring has taken its place. Malik nodded, understanding precisely what she meant. What had begun as an obligation imposed by ancient tradition had evolved into something neither human nor Virilian terminology could adequately define. A bond of mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine affection that transcended cultural boundaries. Together, they turned away from the monument and walked hand in hand toward the palace, silver eyes meeting in silent understanding. Behind them, the crossed weapons continued to pulse with merged energy, illuminating the plaza with their combined light. Much as the unlikely partnership of a human soldier and an alien queen now illuminated the path forward for two civilizations, learning to stand together against the darkness of a vast and often hostile universe. The blade meant for the queen's heart had found instead the beginning of a new future. One neither could have imagined, but both now embraced without reservation. Life debt had become life bond. Obligation transformed to choice. And in that transformation lay the greatest strength of all.